Good morning. Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to the Friday prop party. I'm going to bring in the stars of the show. Of course, we have plenty of props for you today. Jake, of course, has some college football player props. We have a little prize picks action. Then we'll head into some NFL props for later in the weekend. And John, don't worry, he is here. He is just in the chat. So with the MLB questions, he has you. So keep asking those throughout the day. Now, let's get into Jake. Jake cooked up a little Flex Friday prize picks parlay for us. If you want to explain what that means first for people who don't know.
Yeah, so prize picks for the states that you're allowed to, usually the states that you're not allowed to gamble in, you could do prize picks because it's considered daily fantasy. It's a little loophole. And every Friday they have a promotion where if $20 risk-free flex play, which means you could do 4, 5, or 6 bets, or I think you can even do 3, 4, 5, 6 bets.
Mm-hmm.
And you bet $20, and if you lose the $20, you get the $20 back by noon tomorrow.
So hard to pass up on. So what?
Yeah, you might as well use it.
Yeah. So Jake and John have cooked up a Flex Friday parlay for us with 6 legs. So we'll start here. We're starting with the MLB for the first leg.
Yeah. So actually, last Flex Friday we went 3-1-1 and 3-1-1, and so that's like the equivalent of plus 150. So it was profitable last week. So let's keep riding this week. Framber Valdez and Cole Reagans over 11.5 strikeouts. We have them combined for 12.7 strikeouts. I think both of them just faced each other's teams, and Reagans had 7 strikeouts. Valdez had 5. So there's the over right there if that happens again. But I definitely think that either one of them goes well above their line. So I like the 11.5.
Right. And then we move into college football for the second leg, a game happening tonight, Wisconsin at Purdue.
Yeah, so Mordecai's interception prop was at minus 130 on DraftKings, and now it's at minus 140. So people are betting on him to throw a pick. Purdue has at least 1 interception in all 3 of their games so far this season. Mordecai, I think he's 8-8 in the last 2 years on the road. Interception prop, so it's 50-50, and he didn't have an interception last game on the road. So I think he throws one today, especially with that Purdue defense that takes a lot of risks.
Right. Yeah, interceptions will be a theme of the day if you stick around to see through our NFL props as well. We move on. We stay in college football. NC State also tonight at Virginia.
Yeah, Brendan Armstrong. This is a little bit of a revenge game. He spent his last 4 years at Virginia. He's a running quarterback. We have him projected for 53 rush yards. Yesterday we hit on Darren Granger over 38.5 rush yards. He had 53. I like the over here, especially against his old team with not a great defense.
Right. And then we go over to the Air Force with Owen Burke, over 66.5 rushing yards.
Yeah, we have Burke projected for 80. Air Force runs the ball pretty much every play, so he's going to get a lot of run attempts. San Jose State's defense is a little inconsistent. They'll be good one game, bad in the other. But just with the amount of opportunities Owen Burke gets, I think he breaks one, and then we're looking good for over 66.5.
Right. And with the projection from the model that high, that's definitely good value there. The last 2 plays, we moved back to the MLB, and this is more fantasy score, and this is specifically hitting fantasy points, correct?
Yeah, this is hitting fantasy points. We like Cody Bellinger over 8 fantasy points. I think we have him projected for 9 in the model. Just a good matchup today with a lot of runs being scored in that Cubs game against Colorado.
Right.
Hey, can I ask Jake a question?
Yeah.
I don't want to put you on the spot, Jake, but I saw in San Jose State's case that last year they were really good against the run, allowed 3.4 yards per carry. Then this year it's up to 5.7 in the 3 games that we have. Do they lose a lot of defensive players, turning players?
Let me check this.
They played Toledo, who averaged 6.6 yards per carry on 237, 5.7 yards per carry to Oregon State, and 4.8 to USC. So obviously,
the thing is, they play their talent that they played against pretty good. Oregon State has an NFL level running back in Damian Martinez. USC has Marshawn Lloyd. So they face pretty good competition. Toledo has a good running quarterback at Daquan Finn. They have a pretty good ground game. So I think it's a little combination of they probably lost some guys last year, and they played the level of talent's been pretty good.
But I do like that Owen Berg leg because it looks like last year, he was averaging around 7 carries, 6 carries, and this year it's up to, over 16 and a half. And then, so all he's going to do is basically keep getting 16 and,
Exactly. So it looks like in the stability chart that San Jose State, they returned 48% of their defensive production.
So that's not good.
Yeah.
Under 50. Yeah. Good. Sorry.
No, all questions are welcome. So let's move back. We'll go more towards the model, but we have a few more plays for tonight's college football slate. Jake has another, and actually same game parlay here for Wisconsin Purdue.
Yeah, Abdur-Rahman Yassin for Purdue over. He's at 49.5 yards on Prize Picks, but I like that over too. But I like a little same game parlay on DraftKings. If you get DK for Wisconsin over 40 yards, we have him as the leading receiver for Wisconsin. They're throwing the ball a lot more with this offense. I forget who their offensive coordinator is, but he's comes from one of those high passing attacks. And he's hit the over a lot recently. And then Abdur-Rahman Yassin, he's been Purdue's best wide receiver. He's getting a lot of targets. Purdue's throwing the ball quite a bit with Hudson Card. So we lean under this game, and we have value on both of these wide receivers. So that makes me like that if this game does go over, that there's going to be even better value here.
Right.
So Nick wrote Tez Johnson over 45.5 receiving yards. I love that.
Yeah. Nick S is all over our picks. He also has Jalen Milroe too.
Yeah, I like Milroe. I like Tez Johnson, but I plus 170. I think this is good value for two teams that have been throwing the ball quite a bit.
Right.
Yeah. So little side note here, as Jake points out, like it looks like the overall offense for Wisconsin, whoever this new coordinator is paying dividends early on with, 440 rushing total yards per game versus 360 some odd rushing yards total game last year.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why the model's probably picking under, because it's still heavily influenced by last year's stats. So in this case, like the model value for the spread total isn't the play. It's definitely the player prop that you should zero in on.
Right. Yeah, when we talk about these big marquee matchups too, I want to talk about Bama Ole Miss while we are on the subject. We find the value in the player props too. I think the line is 6.5 by this point. When Vegas pays so much attention to these big games, we don't really end up having much discrepancy with them. But one play that Jake likes is Jalen Milroe to have an interception.
Yeah, he had 2 interceptions in his last start against Texas. He didn't play at all. Sorry, my dog Moose has the lamb chop. Moose, please. He has some zoomies. He loves this. He loves this over a half interception at plus money here. But Ole Miss, they have a pretty good defense.
So unprofessional. I'm docking you.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I can't dock,
right.
small amounts, but
Well, we can.
So, yeah. Back.
Last week you were so professional in that great blue shirt.
I know.
You were so classy. And now you're just this t-shirt, shorts, barking dog.
It doesn't matter as long as the props hit. So it doesn't matter what you wear.
Well, it does matter. We'll talk about that later. I'm a very superstitious person, and it's really irking me that you're not wearing the same blue shirt. But okay,
I'm sorry about that. But at plus 110, I love this value. We have him projected for about 1 interception. I don't know how he's going to respond after not starting last game, not even playing last game, and now he's the starter again after he had 2 interceptions. Even when he was in backup duty last year to Bryce Young, he had two games where he threw an interception.
I was going to say, he has 4 games with at least double-digit pass attempts. He has interceptions in 3 out of 4, and he has 2 and 1, so there's an average of 1 per every time he has significant pass attempts. And from what I saw from Milroe, his deep ball was fine. He is horrendous on the short stuff, especially anything on the towards the sideline. So the scouting report will be out that, okay, he might throw it up for grabs,
right?
And so I think there might be some opportunities even for some deep interceptions, if not, and I'm sure Bama will say, hey, if you're gonna turn it over like an arm punt, turn it over on a 30-yard pass downfield as opposed to,
and I don't mind. Yeah, and I don't mind Milroe over 49.5 rushing yards because he might be a little shell shocked from that Texas game that maybe he runs 12 times compared to 7. And
we might be a little low there. We'll see.
Yeah.
Right. Let's move over to another SEC quarterback with Joe Milton, over 261.5 passing yards, playing, I just lost it, UTSA.
Yeah, I think this is a little bit of a bounce back for Milton this game. I wonder if it's time for Nico, their true freshman 5-star, to get some action. But I don't think it was his fault, Milton's fault last week against Florida. I think the play calling was really bad. I think they played right into the Gators' hands that game. I think Tennessee probably is a little more talented team, and the Gators just out-schemed them that game. So I think he bounces back against UTSA. I was talking to our expert Tennessee fan, AB, Alan Bell, and he said he loves this play. He says that he expects Tennessee to want to air out the ball early and often, and I like this over. We have him over 300 yards today.
Wow.
Yeah.
For tomorrow.
And then I see another, not the quarterback, but someone who would be on the other side of him, Baby Tua, one of his wide receivers, over 17.5 receiving yards.
Yeah, this line, I got at 18.5 yesterday, and I was even more valued at 17.5. I think that, their ground game has been okay. It's been pretty good, but he's been good in the receiving game. If you look at this, he's hit the over in all 3 games he's played this season against FBS opponents. He's hit the over, looks like 60% of the time at least. And now he's the featured back, and I like the over big time here, especially against Michigan State defense that isn't that great.
Right. Let's take a quick 180
to forget Noah Kim Korean.
Noah Kim Korean. So we bumped up Michigan State a little.
Yeah. So don't. We got a strong play on Michigan State against the spread. I'm torn. I'm from Maryland. I'm a big Maryland fan. And now I got to go against a brother.
All right, let's take a quick 180 to keep you on your toes, Steven. Over to the NFL, Mike is in the chat asking about Justin Fields rushing at 58.5.
I was hoping you wouldn't ask this. We're projecting the under because the model's driven by stats, heavily weighting this season, right? And so we all saw the cluelessness and hesitancy that Chicago of last week, where they weren't even running the ball, and Fields ran for 4 yards and 3 yards on 4 attempts. So with small sample sizes of football, no model that's relying on past stats would dare have him projected for, those massive games. So we also see his statements about, coaching and basically implying that he's being overcoached and being told what to do every second. He's overthinking it. And now he's just going to go out there and let it rip. So I think that it's caused massive disruption in the books, where yesterday there was a moment where you could get plus 13 on certain books and get minus 11.5 for Kansas City on their side. And you pretty much never see a disparity that big on a Thursday when there's no major injury concerns or weather concerns. So it's like people don't know if Fields is going to react and just run it like 30 times for 300 yards, or if he's going to have another ongoing kind of meltdown of poor performances. And I don't either. So the model says under. I personally think it's over because I think he's just going to do whatever comes natural and just take off.
I think he's going to revert back to what he was playing with last year and what makes him comfortable. And with that offensive line, he's going to take off and run. I mean, the Chiefs have been top 10 in pressures on quarterbacks from last year and this year once they have Jones in the lineup. So he's going to get out that pocket, what makes him feel comfortable. And then also there was a question about DJ Moore with his prop. His prop right now I see is over under is 41.5. I'm really a little bit hesitant about DJ Moore and see how many times they're going to actually throw the ball. DJ Moore does well with short passes, so that can bode well. He was top 8 in efficiency with 10 yards and under. And Justin Fields, he loves to throw 10 yards and under balls. So if they go back to doing what's comfortable for Justin Fields, then he should be able to go over this. But because of the turmoil this week, I really don't know. I mean, 42 yards receiving, that seems reasonable for him to go over. But, man, you really don't know.
Yeah, no, you got to hope it. Okay, it's Justin Fields you saw from Ohio State was throwing these massive deep balls, getting rocked or running, right? Nothing like a nice, clean 7-yard slant for a 10-yard pass. It's like 50 yards, get demolished, or run for 20 yards. And so it should be fun.
And then, Jake, you had a prop in this game too, didn't you?
Yeah, I'm on Roshan Johnson over 40.5 rush plus receiving yards. I think this game is going to play similarly to their first game where they're out of the game and they put Roshan Johnson in the fourth quarter, and he had 30 receiving yards in the fourth quarter in the first game of the season. In the last game, he had 40 rushing yards. So I think he's going to be somewhere in between on both rushing and receiving, and I like the over 40.5. I think he looks really good. I wouldn't be surprised if he takes over the running back one spot over Khalil Herbert. And I'm thinking that they're going to want to throw the ball a lot, and he's a pretty good receiver. And I wouldn't be surprised if he gets 25 receiving yards.
And I remember, if I remember, is when he was the backup to Bijan, that they liked his pass protection more than they liked Bijan.
Exactly. He was a really good pass protector.
And,
he was
a
quarterback. He was recruited as a quarterback. He played some quarterback his freshman year at Texas.
He heard me last week because I had Khalil Herbert over 39.5, and then Roshan was much more effective. And I just checked. I know you guys couldn't see the screen, but I just checked the fantasy ranking, and we have Roshan at RB 35, and the Fantasy Football Today experts, Dave, Jamie, and Heath, have him at 36. So they have a similar projection for us that his role is expanding, where and Herbert is around that 30 range. So I think that all of us experts over here who obsessive over projections like Roshan to keep stepping up.
Speaking of running backs that have to step up, Derek, sorry, sensitive subject, but this is actually a good question looking at Ford's rushing yards. Where have we tweaked his production given the news?
For this week, Kareem Hunt is back, and while he knows the system and I assume he's been in shape to some degree, I don't see any report. I think by next week he'll be back to that backup role, but I overheard Dave Richard talking in the office yesterday that everyone's pretty much buying into that Ford will continue. We have him for 15 carries. Maybe he gets a little more than that if he gets into an early groove. But, the model's not as high on him as the expert rankings. We only have him at RB 33 where he's 19. And that's because Tennessee has been statistically so good against the run. Tennessee's allowing 2.7 yards per carry in their first two games, and last season just 3.4 yards per carry. So that is super, super duper, not to be too technical, really elite in terms of yards per carry allowed.
Right.
Yeah. So what we're thinking of with the Ford, for like the Browns fan perspective, and Stefanski, the head coach, he's saying that he's the number one lead back for the rest of the season. So he's going to get most likely what we have here projected to 15 rush attempts. However, he can catch the ball out of the backfield. So he's one of those kind of guys to where, yes, if they stuff the run, then they'll just give him screen passes like they did last week. And we see the explosiveness that he had on that 69-yard run. So he's going to be more comfortable running behind this offensive line. And also Coughlin was out, the right tackle. So they're still getting used to him not being there. And Wills, he is challenged in blocking pass and run on that left side. So that causes an issue for the Browns.
I'm trying to see. I'm looking up. I'm wondering if the combined receiving and rushing yards might be a stronger play, but because we have a slight value, but you might, this data might be a little outdated, but if the rushing and receiving yards is under 60 is a line, could be some value there.
The problem with Ford is that he hasn't really been playing a lot. So he had injuries last season. So the Browns do like him. It's just that he hasn't really been on the field for games. So they're going to give him the ball. He's going to have his opportunities. Plus, Deshaun Watson is having accuracy issues. He's ranked in the bottom 5 with all of the other rookies for this season. So they're going to have to run the ball because that's the way that this offense was built. They have an offensive line that is built for running the ball, and so they're going to have to do that. Yes, this is a Tennessee Titans team that is good against the run, but they're in the AFC North where everyone loves to run. So that's this
is at least interesting to me. But I was looking at this like, I got to, because Jerome Ford, we don't have him projected for much for receiving yards because until last week he didn't have any, and so I just find it, to me, it's fascinating that our projected combined yardage is right around 61, and that's where his line is. So the sports books and us, there's a lot of players, a lot of stats to grind through. You don't have people necessarily carefully filtering through all these things. So I think that the sportsbook uses a similar methodology as ours, which I know they do, to generate a line around 60. But if last week was any indication as that lead back, and even Chubb was in line for more receptions before his injury and he was getting more receptions. So if Hunt takes that role by week 4, for this week, you could get a Jerome Ford. And we all see Deshaun. He's darting passes more than 10 yards in the air. So maybe this is a Jerome Ford, 5 targets, 4 catch, 30-yard games. So I'm probably going to adjust our Jerome Ford receiving use as a receiver in fantasy.
We have Rick is asking about field goal props. And if you think you're coming to the show and not getting a few field goal props, you are wrong. So Derek, without further ado, Cameron Dicker over 1.5 field goals made. Lay it on us.
All right. So my man, Cameron Dicker, over the 5 out of the last 6 games, he has made at least 2 field goals. Okay. So when you have that, and also you have the Vikings, they give up 2 field goals per game to opponents made. And then last year, they were the second lowest in giving up field goals made at 2.2. Brian Flores, he is a defensive coordinator that does not like to give up explosive plays. So they're going to make the Chargers matriculate the ball down the field at a slow, methodical pace. Then once they get inside of the red zone, they're going to try not to give up a touchdown because they know how well they can, efficiency that they are inside of the red zone. So our Sportsline projection is 2.1 field goals made, and this should cover.
I love this because it's the highest scoring game on the board. It opened at 51.5 up to 54. Our sim's at 58. But Eckler is still highly questionable. And if it's 4th and short in the red zone, Josh Kelly ain't running it in. He's not going to. He's not that type. And we know Alexander Madison's not going to run it in without but he's going to be super careful about not fumbling it because he's been fumbling it like crazy. Right. So you have two guys that are just careful ball security. They're probably not going to run it in. So unless there's a 20-yard in the touchdown pass, I love it where just like both teams run down the field, score touchdowns, score three touchdowns apiece, but reach these 29-point projections with 2 beautiful field goals by Cameron Dicker.
Right. Mike asking again about Tyreek Hill, which is we actually like this game spread a lot. We like the Dolphins minus the 6.5. At least that's what it was on Tuesday. I'm assuming Tyreek Hill will be a large part of that.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Given to the success of this Dolphins offense a little more than he wanted to in July.
Yeah. Well, let's not talk about that. I don't bring up your past, incorrect. I'm always the person when you're like bummed you get something wrong on WNBA. It's like, hey, it's not about that. And then you come in here and stick the knife into me. It's weird. It's kind of, I don't think I deserve it. But and I am increasingly familiar with our social media policy and what you're allowed to say in public. So I think I have a complaint. Tyreek Hill. We have him projected for 91 and at minus 105. Is that the best line? I'm wondering if you can get better. We're evaluating a site if I might, but yeah, minus 105, which is barely, almost even money. Even if you just take that 87.5 times 5%, you're still right around 91. So it's not the strongest play in the world, but the model would have value in that.
Right. Let's move over, take a little break from the model and head over to, we have a lot more interception plays today from quarterbacks. Steven, if you want to talk about yours first and then Derek too.
Yeah. So quarterbacks, I don't have a lot of picks like Jake, so I'll use my time to just tell stories and explain my psychology. What keeps me sane after 20 years of doing this business is superstition and keeping it to work. I watched the 2019 Ravens win game after game on a 13-inch screen in my office 5 feet away from me in between 2 monitors because we kept on winning. I watched the entire Super Bowl run in 2013 on an iPad because when I turned on the TV, we threw an interception immediately against a fumble against Denver. And so I'm into that. Last week, I had Cincinnati as a slight lean against the spread. But I wore the same shirt that I wore this week before. My kids decided to go to the mall, which I was against because they didn't go to the mall week 1 against Houston. but my wife and them took them to the mall. We have this perfect game in Cincinnati. It was beautiful. I've already gone on record as saying we have value on the Ravens against the spread, so I can't fade them for my superstitious purposes. But Lamar Jackson is, I obviously don't want Lamar to throw a bunch of picks, but it's going to be sloppy weather probably up there. And Lamar is not always great in sloppy weather. He's from South Florida, but if you live from South Florida, it rains almost every day, but it rains for around 5 minutes and stops. So something tells me when they're out in Pompano and Coconut Creek, where I live, that they didn't play through the rain. Plus money, plus 116 on one or more interceptions. He didn't have one last week, but he so I guess he's due to a degree. Roughly an 85% chance of him having one interception or more in our model. His career average in interceptions at home is double 0.8 per game as it is on the road. And I think that has a lot to do with Baltimore is a tough stadium. Can be windy, a lot of bad weather in the falls. And whereas when he's traveling out west, down south, it's better conditions. And the over is 47%, I believe, one or more interceptions since 20 and 8 and 8 since 22. The Colts pass rush is much better this year. They have 8 sacks this year. So yeah, I think Lamar is going to throw 3 touchdowns. I think we're going to clobber the Colts, but there could be one pick.
Yeah,
Ryan Tannehill.
It's an 80% chance of rain in Baltimore for Sunday.
And wind. And the big thing is the wind. It's a tropical storm, so it's like 25-mile-per-hour winds.
Yeah.
So averaging 1.4 interceptions per sim, Ryan Tannehill. The over is 39 and 29, 57.5% on the road versus just 45.6% at home. Cleveland's defense has been very good, and Derek pointed this out early in the week. I'm a little worried that they're too good, and Tannehill won't have enough pass attempts.
This is how good the Browns defense is. They have given up only 14 first downs in the first 2 weeks. The league average is 36 first downs.
Well, just so your head doesn't get so big with your one-on-one Browns, before you get all Brown loving. I want to remind you that Tennessee's been pretty good defensively as well. And so we do have model value on the under. We only have 36 total points in this. The game was 41, came down to 39.5. So a lot of 3 and outs on both sides. So that's what I'm hoping, that both teams 3 and out, and you end up having like 14 drives and plenty of opportunities to throw at least one pick for Tannehill. Next one's Josh Allen. Again, he's averaging over 1 interception per sim. We know his track. We know how he did in week 1 against the Jets. The Washington pass rush is excellent, and they have superstars. And I like Josh Allen's, his YOLO fire. Like he just tries to show that what he can do, that he can always recreate the magic of what he did in Kansas City in a loss, but in the in the playoffs a few years back. And when he sees that everyone from Chase Young and the monsters that Washington has, I think he's going to want to prove something, and he won't be able to squash that desire to take risky shots downfield. Since 22, the over is 13 and 9. So before that, it was 31 and 34 when he was kind of uncontrolled under Daboll. And then it's been well over 50% since then on the road. He averaged slightly more on the road than at home. And his last 9 games, the over is 6 and 3. I think Derek you're on the Carr one, right?
Yes. Derek Carr, basically getting an interception for this game. The best value that I've seen is the minus 140. Derek Carr has thrown an interception in the last 7 games that he's played. The Green Bay Packers are averaging 1 interception to their opponents, to the opposing opponent's quarterback in last season. And this year they have their opposing quarterbacks have thrown them at least 1 interception in each of these games. Derek Carr is most likely going to be without Jamal Williams, which is their starting running back. That's starting because of Alvin Kamara is out. So that means that he's going to have to pass the ball more. And our Sportsline model projection is basically 1 interception for this game. So the Packers are really good on defense. So that's why I like this 1 interception for Derek Carr.
Yeah. I saw a question in the chat from Finn about Calvin Ridley, which actually is somebody that we like, and we do have a pick on here. I forget whose this was.
I think Jacob.
Yeah, that was one of my plays. So Ridley, his line was 66.5 on DraftKings, 68.5 on FanDuel, but you get him at 64.5 on PrizePicks, which I grabbed him at this morning. I mean, he went way over in the first game. In the last game, Trevor just had a bad game against a good Kansas City Chiefs team. I know Derek Stingley is out for Houston, so I think it's a pretty good matchup for Ridley with no Derek Stingley in there. Well, he'd probably go against Jack Griffin, I mean, who was on the Jaguars and got toasted a lot the last couple of years. Ridley had 3 balls thrown to him that he had 1 foot in last week that would have been good in college, but weren't good in the NFL. And I think he's still getting plenty of targets. I like the over. We have him at 73. So with the juice at PrizePicks is minus 137. So even with that, you're still getting a little value there. I also like Trevor Lawrence rush yards. And this goes along with the Stevens saying that Trevor needs to run the ball more. And he is running the ball more. He has over 20 yards his first 2 games. And I think he's learning that he could roll out and run instead of forcing these balls in, which he did in his first 2 years in the league. So
he's sitting in that pocket, and then he's losing fumbles all the time for the guys coming out from behind, and it's been a real problem with him.
When you got sandwiched by the Chiefs. Oh, that was disgusting. But anyway, let's move over. I don't think we've talked about Brian Robinson yet. Another great rushing prop we have.
Yeah, so Brian Robinson, he has in 9 out of the last 10 games, he has at least 56 rushing yards. Well, over 56 rushing yards. And so the Buffalo Bills, they have given up 105 yards on average to their opponents all of last season. This season, the Buffalo Bills are averaging 113 yards given up to the opposition. And Brian Robinson is responsible for 57.4% of the rushing yards for the Washington Commanders. If you multiply that times the 105 rushing yards that the Bills give up last season, you get 60 yards rushing. So
I just popped up. Just to that point, Derek, I just popped up Antonio Gibson to show that he's not being trusted anymore this is no 60-40 split, right? You had a guy that was getting 18, 9, 9, 5, 5, and then only 5 total this year.
This is Brian Robinson's backfield right now.
Yeah.
Then our Sportsline model is projecting him to have 64 rushing yards. So with a guy rushing that much over 50, I don't know why this line is that way, but hey, I'll take the value.
All right. Another player we have value on, Steven, with George Pickens, Sunday Night Football, Steelers at the Raiders.
Yeah, I think I don't know if he's taken, but I know Kenny Pickett apparently is an incredibly loyal, in love, and he gets very in love and infatuated with his number 1 wide receivers. So in college, it was Jordan Addison who put up ridiculous numbers at Pitt, and Addison transferred to be with what I thought was his best friend at USC, Caleb Williams. And even though there's more talent maybe around, his numbers went down by like 40%. When he at USC his last year, because Pickett was just falls in love with that one superstar wide receiver. This year, it's George Pickens. Like Pat Freiermuth. One of the things that I hate the most as a Ravens fan is hearing the Steelers crowd call Muth, because it's a ripoff of Heath when they had, but that's a ripoff of Heap from the Ravens when we had tight end Todd Heap. But you don't hear Muth anymore because Muth has 5 receiving yards on the year, and 2 catches. Because Kenny, sweet Kenny, only has eyes for George. And so Pickens is sitting here with 37% of the passing yards are to Pickens. That is Cooper Kupp level and almost Puka Nacua level. Not quite. No one's like that guy. But, he's borderline there. And with, again, Deontay Johnson still out, I think that it's not like we have Pickett and the team in general with a massive projection. Our line for Pickett of right under 220 is right in line with the gambling line. So again, they're using, as Derek did with the rushing yards on Robinson, I think Pickens is a pretty safe bet to get at least 30% of the yards, considering he's also a big play wide receiver. We saw him take that 70-yarder to the house. So And he's a amazing receiver, so tough catches in the end zone, all those things. He's just perfectly suited for it. And again, the love. 30% of 200 is no rocket scientist, but I believe that's 60. So in my mind, a conservative projection is 30% of just 200 yards, and that's over 54.5.
And it looks like we have him projected for 71 yards, if I'm reading that correctly.
Yes. Yeah, so he's right around, again, I say only 30% of the 226.
Right. Another question, a game I don't think we have any props in, but just a good question in general with Bryce Young out for the Seahawks-Panthers game. How did our model react to that?
That's interesting. The lines and the model, if anything, I saw lines move to 6.5 to maybe a half a point. I thought I saw Seattle go from -6 to -6.5. It looks like the consensus may have tweaked back down to -6. But both cases of Bryce in Seattle and even Anthony Richardson, who's looked great for Colts, I think the general public and the betting public, the ones who influence the lines, see both Indianapolis and in this case Carolina being pretty much just as good with their experienced backups as they are with their young rookie quarterbacks. So, we don't have any. Interestingly, our projection is -4.5, which was the exact same as Seattle opened at. So the public is all on Seattle after their impressive win at Detroit. I am not on Seattle because they're dead to me after what they did to us in Week 1 against the Rams. Once you got one shot with me. Fool me once, so shame on that great quote. I don't want to sound like George Bush, but and so what was the question? I'm sorry, I'm kind of rambling and forgot what I was talking about.
Just what our value is now.
Dalton has the AFC North scares me from great things. So my opinion of most AFC North quarterbacks are much higher than the general public. Andy Dalton was the 9th best passer in the league last year in terms of passer rating. It's just that all his mistakes happen in prime time, and they happen like back to back, and they're like interceptions on Monday Night Football. So, but he actually played pretty well in terms of just overall efficiency. So something tells me that he will perform just as well as Bryce Young would have performed.
I was thinking maybe like a Mingo over prop because he had some targets last week. I think they're going to want to because they don't have a great receiving core. Thielen, it was Mr. Reliable on third down last week, but I think Mingo is the most talented wide receiver in that group over Chark, Thielen, and all those other guys. And so he got a couple late targets from Bryce Young, but I think Andy Dalton's he has more confidence than Bryce Young, at least throwing the ball downfield. They were really not letting him throw the ball downfield at all.
Is there anything we can take away from Olave's performance with Dalton last year? And I'm not the person to talk about film and technique and style wide receivers, but I know that Mingo is a big, fast dude, but big.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if like a Thielen.
Problem with the Panthers is they can't block. If you can't block and Dalton is a statue, he's going to get killed out there. So I would stay away from Dalton. Sorry, that's.
I'm wondering if Thielen and Hurst might be the better receiving potential, but our projections for them are both pretty low, so I don't think there would be value.
I think that's all the NFL props that we had prepared. Ask a question about Justin Jefferson quick. We'll hit that before we finish up Jake's props. Justin
Jefferson, Minnesota. Yeah, I'm probably going to like.
We have about 117 yards or something like that.
Yeah, that's big for us because remember the projections are based on like the average of the simulations. So for every case, there might be there's the 150 potential, there's the 40 potential. So to have an average this high is pretty high. What's the line? 98, 89,
I'm trying to pull it up.
92.
It was 100 on I think DK and Prize Picks.
Wow.
Yeah.
So even with that,
it's 100.
102 and a half. Yeah.
100 and a half and minus 115.
Yeah. So minus 115, then you'd have to have him at over 115 yards for it to be technically good betting value. So, but I think this game, again, we like the over in the game. We like a lot, and it's a close game. You never know. Could be we have a 0.1 difference in projected score, so maybe it's overtime. Chargers just played in overtime.
We have Addison 59 yards, so maybe he's at 49.5 on most books.
Yeah, we don't have any value on Madison. I did update this. This is an older view. Yeah. Oh, Addison. Yeah.
So I don't mind that play because they might be doubling Jefferson, and that Chargers defense isn't great to begin with. So I think Addison could have a pretty big game. I still think could.
The values that we have just popping up just randomly looking at, again, these lines might be a little outdated. Kirk Cousins over 3.5 rushing yards. Yeah, one scramble against a good pass rush. They got good pass rushers. Addison's over. Kicking points for Cameron Dicker. If you're worried about touchdown efficiency, then Dicker might make it up in extra points. So Derek had the Dicker 2 field goal prop. There's also maybe you want to get cocky and double dip with a total kicking points prop at plus money.
I stayed away from that one. the points, the total kicking points, I stayed away because I did one on paper last week and that I thought I would have liked. No, it didn't go through. So I'm like, yeah, that doesn't.
Can't lose heart. Okay. Keenan Allen over 6.5 receptions. It does look like the early concerns of Quentin Johnson taking targets away from them don't seem to be justified, right? And Keenan Allen, while healthy, is going to be fed 10. He's going to get 12 targets today if he stays healthy in this game, right?
Yeah, so I think the cornerbacks for the Vikings are not that good, so he should be able to get open. But we didn't see value because I looked at Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. We didn't have value on either one of those.
Yeah, so I mean, it might not be technical mathematical value, but there could be, the mathematical lean that goes along with what you think could happen, and I think Keenan Allen could definitely have 8 catches on 12 targets.
If Eckler plays, then it's going to be wide open for their offense. If Eckler doesn't play, then they might throw the ball more.
Right. I want to show just one more time for people who joined Jake and John's Prize Picks Flex Friday parlay. People want to screenshot that or have a second to look at that. And then also our interception graphic, just in case people have joined, if they want to see that. These are our favorite quarterbacks to throw interceptions today. We'll go over one or two more of Jake's college props, and then we'll hit the recap screen. Let's go back to the SEC. Devin Leary over 1.5 passing touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, if you've seen that Vandy defense, it's rough. I know UNLV had they had 31 points, 37 points on Vandy last week. It was rough, and Vandy was winning that game early. It was
17-0. 17-0.
17-0, and they lost that game.
4.5. They couldn't cover 14.5 stinking points. They're an SEC team.
Yeah, and Kentucky has some good wide receivers between Tavion Robinson, Dane Key, Barryon Brown, and Devin Leary. He's experienced quarterback. He had a handful of 4 touchdown games last year. NC State. I think they might want to give him. This is the game for him to get some confidence before the SEC slate gets really tough. So I wouldn't be surprised if he airs it out quite a bit this game. So I really like it.
Where was Leary in 2021?
He was at NC State.
Okay, because he had 4 touchdowns or more in 3 out of 4 games. That included FSU, Wake Forest, UNC as opponents.
Yeah.
So he had 4 against Clemson. So in 21, he had his best games against his toughest competition.
Yeah.
He had 3. Okay, I want to hear. Yeah. Let's go one more college football quarterback prop. BYU is at Kansas. Kansas is a team we love in the stability model, but we do have value on BYU's quarterback passing yards.
Yeah, Slovis is an experienced quarterback. He's been at USC. He's been at Pitt. Now he's at BYU. He didn't need to hit the over last week's game, and BYU still won. But he had 167 yards, 2 touchdowns, which is good against an Arkansas team. And BYU's big play in that game was a wide receiver throwback pass, which was like 50 yards. And I don't think they're going to run that 2 weeks in a row. So those 50 yards from the wide receiver I think Slovis could get those yards this week. And they have a couple wide receivers back from injury. Kansas, I mean,
why are they playing so much better against the pass this year, at least in yards allowed?
It's
Is it competition? It's teams they play.
I mean, Nevada has Brendan Lewis as their quarterback, who's not good at all. He couldn't even win Colorado's starting quarterback job when they didn't win a game.
Right.
And then Illinois, they like their run dominance, the 202 yards. We
Yeah.
hit the over prop on Luke Altmaier in that game.
Okay. I remember it well.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm surprised that this line's under 200, especially since Kansas has a high-powered offense with Jalen Daniels, and I think they could be able to score quite a bit on this BYU team. I think that if they're down, they're going to have to throw the ball. So
we like the over in the game quite a bit. Why do you think the public is betting under 87%?
I was wondering that too. I don't know why there's a thing. Let me check cover stuff.
Yeah, so we might want to just check. I mean, the line's only moved down 1 point, so that usually if it's significant weather, you would see 2.5, 3 point move. But the 1 point move makes sense in light of massive public support on the under. Just why would you love the under? Why would you love the under? What's wrong with the public? I guess BYU scored 14 against Sam Houston State.
Yeah, so
it's enough. That stays with you. That stays in your mind, I guess.
But then if you look at Sam Houston State, they've held everyone to their team total under. That's all they have is a defense. They have no offense.
Yeah.
So
but if you're like, oh, BYU just played a new school to FBS and scored 14, they must, first impressions. Even though BYU is not making a first impression, that for the year they made a first impression that wasn't so hot, and they don't have Puka, right? He was there, so it's like all the offense went in the fifth round.
Came from?
Puka came from BYU. He was a 5-star recruit, went to Washington, and then transferred to BYU.
So once they saw Puka explode, and then BYU crater, it's like it's all Puka.
Right.
I love how everyone's all of a sudden Puka. Man.
We only had a historic first 2 weeks of the season, but who cares?
I don't know. I think our record on player props might be right up there with Puka's.
Yeah. So Nick S just asked, do we trust DJU?
We just don't have good press.
Yeah.
We do have a DJU prop.
We do. Yeah.
I like his over 15.5 rush yards against Washington State.
Yes.
But I don't trust DJU. And honestly, I think Washington State looks a lot better with their OC this year than they did. Well, Ben Arbuckle, 28-year-old OC for Washington State, I think their offense looks a lot improved. And their coach last year went to North Texas, and he's their head coach now. But I think Cam Ward looks a lot more comfortable. And I'm
looking at the stacks.
DJU looks comfortable too, but I think I trust Washington State at home a little more. I think DJU.
I'm just saying for that specific rushing stat, I just want to make sure that Washington State isn't some vicious pass rush.
So they had two. So I looked at this.
They're not. Some
vicious pass. So they have Ron Stone is a pretty good. He's a pretty good pass rusher. Ron Stone. He had 2 sacks against Wisconsin, but even with those 2 sacks against Wisconsin, Tanner Mordecai had 21 rushing yards in that game, and I think he was sacked 4 times total. So
is there anything to take away from DJU not running as much in 2 games as he did last year at Clemson?
It's just they were ahead in both of those games. I think the tougher competition, like he was in the ACC, he was forced to run the ball more, and I think they wanted him to air out the ball a little more against these lesser competitions.
He played really well that week 1. Hopefully his kind of subpar passing game against San Diego State makes him think maybe I better run a little more.
That's what I was thinking too, honestly. I think that there's going to be more designed runs, and I kind of like that he didn't really run the ball that often in the first 2 games.
And I like that a line of 15.5, 15 yards would represent his third lowest rushing total as a starter.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you get that on Underdog. I think it was 16.5 on Prize Picks. I got it 15.5 on Underdog. But I don't mind that on DK or anything, wherever you find it. Anything under 20, we're gonna have value on pretty much because we have them at 35.
That's big time. So there's a few other picks that I'll include in the recap screen, but let's throw the recap screen on. I finally made one. I'm really moving up, doing some big girl things here. But this is what we were looking at from today's show between college football and NFL. So take a screenshot, do what you want to do with that. Hopefully we'll have this updated by the end of the football weekend and Monday night. And we are looking for another great weekend. Let's take a look one more time at last weekend. 6-4 on college football and 6-4 on NFL. So looking to stay hot, looking to stay profitable. I like the plays today. And so that's all we have for right now. Keep asking us questions through the day on Twitter. Everyone's open to those. And we will see you Tuesday if we do not see you before that. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Keep asking us questions, and we'll see you soon.